We're going to configure our VLAN database. And to do that, we're going to hop onto our first switch, okay? And use our password of Kiwi. And enter our password of Kiwi. And let's go and first, why don't we set our VTP domain? Actually, I'll tell you what, maybe we'll just make our VLANs and then we'll do VTP. I'm trying to figure out the most logical way to approach this. So let's do VLAN database to go to VLAN configuration mode, and VLAN 2, because remember VLAN 1 is the administrative VLAN, and let's go through these here. So 2 will be Cylons. Alright, 2 will be Cylons, and let's see what we're going to do for 3. Apollo and Starbuck and Gaius were all humans, so VLAN 3 will be humans. And VLAN 4 will be hybrids, hybrid 1, hybrid 2. Jedis or space pirates. Han Solo is kind of a space pirate, Yoda's a Jedi. It's hard to decide. I should have thought of that, doggone it. Just put my favorite 2 characters in there. Jedis is like shorter than space pirates, so we'll, even though we know Han Solo is on a Jedi, but still, he's really awesome character. So, but we'll just call that VLAN the Jedi. He's on the Jedi side, right? He fights for the good guys. So we have Kirk and Spock. What are we going to call them? The good guys. The Federation, maybe. There's my cat meowing. All right, so the Federation. So we have 2. VLAN 2, VLAN 3, VLAN 4, VLAN 5, and VLAN 6, which is the Federation. What's VLAN 7 going to be? How about refugees? Because Sarah Connor and John Connor were refugees. Of course, obviously, if we were doing this professionally, we'd say accounting and engineering and research and development. But that's no fun. Come on, let's have some fun. Good grief, it's just a tutorial. We don't have to be serious all the time, right? We can't have some fun, right? But of course, if you're setting this up for your company, that's what you would do. You would do this, that's what you would be naming your VLANs after, departments and whatnot, job functions, locations, Baltimore, Los Angeles, Atlanta, whatever. Okay, so refugees, and then our last one here, they are Terminators, different models, T1000 cameras, so that's what we'll call them. Alright, so there are 8 VLANs. The administrative VLAN, and respectively we have Cylons right here, we have humans right here, hybrids right here, we have Jedis right here, and we slide this over, we have Federation right here, we have refugees right here, we have Terminators right here. Now these VLANs only exist on switch 1 until we set up VTP. And once we set up our trunking protocol and configure a VTP domain and set these, then we can actually copy the VLAN information. So we'll look at the way Cisco recommends that we should do that. But let's exit out of VLAN configuration mode, and if I do show VLAN, notice that here's all of our VLANs now. So administrative VLAN, and remember that's going up from our multiple, so that would be 16 right there, and then that would be 32. And then 48, and then 64, and then 80, and then 96, and 112, and 128. So those are all of our subnets there. We'll still have plenty of subnets left to go and host if we needed them. Not saying that we do, but let's go to global configuration mode and use some VTP commands. Woohoo! And we need to specify a domain. And I know that this is completely illogical and out of sequence, but hey, we'll just call it Battlestars. And every switch by default is in VTP server mode. In VTP server mode, you can create, modify, and delete VLANs. You can also put a switch in VTP client mode. When you do, it can receive VLAN information from a VTP server, but you can't make modifications, delete or add things. But the problem is if all switches are in VTP server mode by default, they won't get the VLAN information. Just click my coffee cup. They won't get the VLAN information from the designated VTP server, so to speak. So what Cisco recommends is that you set up your one switch as your VTP server and your VTP domain, just like we just did. And then you go and you configure all your other switches temporarily as VTP clients, and they'll get all that VLAN information. But then they say, as soon as they do, right after you make them a client, then turn around and make them a server again. And the reason is because if you don't, and you turn the switch off, it will have to go through the process of relearning all the VLANs all over again, because it won't be saved to NVRAM or non-volatile RAM. On the other hand, if you make the switch a temporary client, get the VLAN information, and then poof, switch it back to server mode, it'll store all that information in non-volatile RAM and VRAM, and then were you to turn it off and turn it back on, it would save you lots of time as far as you wouldn't have to learn about all those VLANs and things. So again, let's just look at the status. I'm going to use one more command here. I'm going to exit out, and I'm going to do show. Love those show commands, VTP and status. We did show VLANs to look at our VLAN database, but our VTP status, notice that our domain is set to Battlestars and our operating mode is server. So all the other switches need to have the same domain name, Battlestars, but temporarily we'll switch them to client. They're server by default, but then once we do that, we'll switch them back to server, and we'll have the best of both worlds, so to speak. So let's go ahead and do that. Oops. So to configure other switches, there's not a whole lot we have to do. Most of the work was done on the first switch. Let me go to privilege mode, and I would just temporarily do VTP space mode space client. But before I do that, let me just show you. I'm going to join the domain, so VTP domain Battlestars, okay, VTP domain Battlestars, and then I'm going to Control Z down to privilege mode, and I'm going to do a show VLAN. Notice that even though I'm in the same domain now, because I'm a server and not a client, I don't have that VLAN information. So Cisco recommends that you do this to kind of speed things up a little bit, so you don't have to wait or configure things more than necessarily, manually. So I'm going to go back to global configuration mode, and I'm just going to say VTP mode client. When I do that, if I drop down here and I do a show VLAN, notice now all my VLANs are there. And if I do a show VTP status, yeah, sure, I was a part of the domain, but now since I'm a client, I get all that information. Now, to force that to be stored in NVRAM, all I have to do is go back to global and say VTP mode server, and then exit and show VTP status. And now I'm a server, Battlestars, but I have all this cool VLAN information now. Alright, so administrative VLAN, and I have VLANs 2 through 8. So I just want to do that on all my other switches, and I'll be all set. And I don't really have to do a copy run start, but I don't know if it's maybe good practice. That's because I'm in a VTP server that's in NVRAM. I'm going to hop on the constellation, and I'm going to do the same thing all the way down. I just want to disconnect this from these bottom 3 switches here temporarily. So, revision numbers and conflicting VLAN information doesn't give me a problem until I get my VTP domain set up and my VLAN information copied over. So, let me go here and here, and to global configuration mode, and set my domain, and let me go to client mode and server mode, and everything should be set. And here's my VLAN database information, and okay, and I'm a server. Everything's good there, so it's in NVRAM anyway, but hey, just a habit. And let's move on to the next switch. So I'll reconnect 11 to 12 here so I can get my VLAN database information. Now I'm going to disconnect the Defiant from the bottom 2 switches. I'm going to go over here and do my kiwi, and go to global configuration mode, and let me do VTP battle stars, and let me do VTP mode client, and then back to server. Do a show VLAN. There's my VLAN information, VTP status, and I'm server, so good there. Copy Ruben. Huh. I could go for a Ruben right now. Okay. Man. I'm tired. I can't type straight. Okay, port 11. Let's plug that back in. And same thing on the data list. We'll just disconnect him from the bottom switch real quick. So we set up his VTP domain and VLAN information. And let's go config T, and let's go ahead and set up VTP domain, battle stars, and VTP mode client, and VTP mode server. Okay, and let's exit, and we got our VLAN database information. Show VTP status, looks good. We're server, there's our domain. Okay. And now we just have to do our last one. Let's replace our connection there, put it back in port 12, and now on our last switch for our VLAN information, go to privilege mode, enter a password of Kiwi, global configuration mode, VTP domain, battle stars, VTP mode is going to be temporarily client, and then VTP mode server. And let me drop down here, look at my VLAN database, there it is, and I'm a server, battle stars, so everything looks good there. Copy, run, start. Phew, okay, that's the next step. So we've got all our VLANs created, our IP addressing, passwords and host name and all these wonderful things. And now we've finally got not only our VLANs set up and copied, but we've got our VTP domain set up and everybody's in VTP server mode. So now we're ready to go in and start assigning ports, either to be an access port or a trunk port, and to assign VLAN membership. Alright, so we're looking at all of the different steps and procedures we would take configuring a switch, only we're doing it kind of times 7 in our rack here. So what have we done so far? Well, we've figured out our subnetting, we did all of our IP addressing and our subnet masking, we set up passwords on our switches, we configured host names, default gateway, we went in and we set up our VLANs, created our VLAN database, we set up our VTP domain. All of that has been set up now. The information is copied to all the switches. So now at this point we're ready to go in and start setting up our ports and actually assigning VLAN membership to our ports. And remember, when you look at our switches, there's two kinds of ports. There's an access port where information for only one VLAN flows through and you assign VLAN membership to those ports. And then there are trunking ports that allow all VLAN information to flow through. And I need those for two things. I need trunking ports to connect a switch to a router, in this router on a stick example, and I also need trunking ports to connect the switches together. So going all the way down, I want to configure these ports as trunk ports, so they allow all VLAN information to travel through them. On the other hand, going all the way down, I'm going to configure these ports on the left as access ports, because they're the ports that actually have hosts connected to them that are members of those VLANs. So we'll start up here at the top router, and I'm going to go into privilege mode and global configuration mode, and I want to select some ports, and I'll just start at the left and go to the right. So remember that it's slot, so fast Ethernet, slot 0, and port 1. And I want to use a couple of commands here. Switch port, access, VLAN, and remember that 1 is the administrative VLAN, which I'm put all my switches in. So that's network 16, so I want to do network 32, that's VLAN 2. And that's these, the Cylons, VLAN 2. So they're plugged into ports 1 and 2 on the switch, so I want to assign VLAN 2 to those 2 ports once they are selected. So I hit enter. The other thing I want to do is make it an access port. And the reason is we only want information for one VLAN to go through that port and to not be tagged, so we'll do that. And then I want to select my next port, which that was the port that 3 was plugged into. And then the next port is the one that 6 is plugged into. Okay, so I'm going to go over and select that port, and that would be fast Ethernet, F slot 0 and /2, port 2. And switch port and access and VLAN 2 going to be in the same VLAN. Oops, left off a C there. And switch port mode access. Excuse me. And the next thing I want to do is configure my trunking ports. And again, remember they are 11 and 12. And just one command I have to use there, and that's to set the trunk port to. Good grief, I can't walk and chew gum at the same time. Okay, so let me do int f and 0 /11, port 11, and switch port mode and trunk. Well, I'm trying to talk to you and do this tutorial, and yeah, I'm not. Maybe I should just shut up and you could just watch. How about that? But I'll try to narrate as I go. So I want to select those 2 ports for my trunking ports. Switch port mode and trunk. And now I have all my ports assigned and configured in this instance. So if I were to hop out of here, we can test it. We can look at our running configuration, and we can also do a show VLAN. And there are different things we can do, but those are our ports. And let me do a running configuration here. Notice it's access mode and it's part of VLAN 2. And notice that 11 and 12 are trunk mode. Okay, so we'll try to do the other ones a little bit faster and pick up the pace, but I wanted to kind of take our time on the first one there so you understand what we're doing. We're just going to do the same thing all the way down, right? The idea of taking all of the ports that our hosts are plugged into and assigning them. So we'll assign VLAN membership for VLAN 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 on this side, on the left side. And then on the right side going down, here's all our trunk ports, and we'll put those in trunk mode. Okay, so let's hop to it. So going on down our switch fabric and our rack, our next switch is the Galactica, and we have 3 hosts. So these guys are going to be access mode, these 2 again are going to be trunk mode. And this is VLAN 3, right? So let's hop on our switch and get to it. Our password of Kiwi, go to privilege mode, password of Kiwi, go to global configuration mode, select our interfaces, fast Ethernet, port 1. Let me do switch port access VLAN, and we are VLAN 3 now. Switch port and mode. Let's set it for access, not Mado. Access. And let's do fast Ethernet port 2 and VLAN 3 and mode access and fast Ethernet 0, 3 and VLAN 3 and access and port 0, 11 and set up trunking mode for a trunk link and internet fast Ethernet 0 /12, and we'll do the same there. Okay, And we're all set. And again, if I looked at the running configuration, let me pull this up here. Okay, so port 1, 2, and 3 are all in VLAN 3. That's what we want. They're access mode good, and 11 and 12 are trunk mode. That's exactly what we want. Okay. Now let's hop on our third switch, the Valkyrie. And go to privilege mode, password of Kiwi, and global configuration mode. And let's select our ports, fast Ethernet port 1, and switch port access VLAN 4. Let me make sure we're on the Valkyrie. Let's see, VLAN 2, VLAN 3, VLAN 4, right? And these two hosts here. Okay, and let's change it to access mode. Switch port mode access, and next interface fast Ethernet port 2, and VLAN 4, and access mode, and interface fast Ethernet 0 port 11. And let's put that into trunk mode, and good grief. Okay, and let's select the next interface, F012, and switch port mode trunk, and again, we'll just go through and let's see the first two interfaces, VLAN 4 and access mode, that looks good, and trunk mode, that looks good. And let's move on. Let's see, that was the Valkyrie. Let's move on to the Constellation now. And then global configuration mode, fast Ethernet 0 port 1. And let's make sure Constellation, let's see, VLAN 2, VLAN 3, VLAN 4, VLAN 5. Switch port, access VLAN 5. Make it an access port. Fast Ethernet port 2. VLAN 5 once again, mode access. Fast Ethernet port 11. Switch port mode trunk, and port 12 trunk. Okay. And once again, if we scroll up, notice ports 1 and 2, VLAN 5 access mode, and notice 11 and 12 are trunk mode. Okay. That takes care of the Constellation. Now we're going to hop on the Defiant, and that's VLAN 6. So and let's select our first two ports here, and let's make sure we don't have any more 3-fers. We only had 3 ports, and the rest of these are just 2 ports. Okay, yeah. So fast Ethernet port 1, and I want to do switch port mode, no, access, and VLAN 6. Let me just verify that. 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, correct spot. Okay, so it's VLAN 6. And switch port, man. Switch port mode access, and let me select the next fast Ethernet interface port 2, and VLAN 6, and mode access, and set up our trunk links, fast Ethernet 011, and switch port mode trunk, and interface fast Ethernet 012, and switch port mode trunk, and Just look at our running configuration as well. And then access mode, VLAN 6 looks good, and trunk mode looks good. Okay, and that takes care of the Defiant. Now let's get onto the, hop into the data list over here. And go over here and over here. And go to global configuration mode. And in global configuration mode, let's select Fast Ethernet port 1. Switch port, access VLAN 7. And set it to access mode, and let's select the next port, port 2, VLAN 7, and access mode, and set up our 2 trunk ports, Fast Ethernet 011, switch port mode trunk, and Fast Ethernet 012, switch port mode trunk, and save our configuration. Look at our running configuration, and what do we got here? Okay, access VLAN 7 looks good, trunk looks good. Alright, data list enough. So we're on our last switch, the Copernicus over here. So on the Copernicus, and go to privilege mode. Boy, it's running slow, the simulator. Alright, go to global configuration mode. Guess I have all this stuff in here, so. And let's select the first port, Fast Ethernet 0 port 1. And access VLAN, I'm going to put the terminators in VLAN 8. The terminators VLAN. Man, I'm telling you. I just have a thing for dyslexically flipping those around. Alright, Fast Ethernet, let's select port 2 and VLAN 8 and access mode. Alrighty then. Yay. Copy run start. Okay. And now we have the port configurations, the trunk ports. Well, let's just verify all the others. Let's verify this one too with the show run. And then we have access mode, VLAN 8, and 11 and 12. Good thing. I guess we forgot to do that, didn't we? Yeah, it always pays to check behind yourself. And let me do int Fast Ethernet 0. All I have to do is 12. But switch port mode trunk. That should be a trunk link. Alright. And let me look at the running configuration. And VLAN 8, access mode, and trunk mode. Alright, it looks good there. Okay, so all of our ports are set. Now the only thing we have left to do is routing.